and welcome to the Romance Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and I'm also Morgan Brice for the purposes of this panel. Of course, as Gail Z. Martin, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, and more, but as Morgan Brice, I write urban fantasy, male, paranormal romance. And we are talking romance today because this is all about friends to lovers. But first, let's have our other panelists introduce themselves. Tanya?
Hi, I'm Tanya Chris. My tagline is that I write feminist-friendly romance and erotica. Most of the time these days it is MM, but I have some other pairings out there. And I write men who are good to women, even when they love each other.
Oh, I love that. That's a great tagline. Elouise, how about you?
Hi, I'm Elouise East, a fairly new author compared to many others at the moment. I write male romance at the moment, and I dabble mainly in the contemporary area, but I stretch it along from sweet and fluffy to the taboo side of things, so that everything in between. So that's pretty much what I do.
Awesome. Well, you know, we're here to talk about friends to lovers. That's such a popular trope. What does the friends to lovers trope mean to you when, you know, because we all come to these things with a bit of a different meaning. Tanya?
You know, what I think is so appealing about friends to lovers for people, or for me at least, is that idea of, you know, marrying your best friend, of having it all in one package. And I really appreciate relationships in romance novels that are grounded on more than physical attraction. I really like to see something deep that is, that I believe is going to last. Like, it's nice when the author ties it up with a happy ever after at the ending, but sometimes I don't believe it because these two characters have been arguing all the way through the book and disbelieving each other, distrusting each other. And now here they are at the end, and I'm supposed to believe that it's all just smooth sailing. I don't know, you know, so I really enjoyed the friends to lovers trope because there's a really solid framework there of them trusting each other, of them, you know, being there for each other, working through things, having interests in common, everything that it takes to make a good relationship besides physical attraction. And then you add the physical attraction in there and it's like, ooh, wow, excellent, now you got it all.
Yeah, how about you, Elouise?
A lot of what Tanya said as well, to be honest, but I like also when they've not really realised that they like each other. So they've gone all these years being the best of friends, and then something happens and it makes them look at them slightly differently. And then all the emotions that they thought was just friendly, they're all second guessing all the interactions they've had over the years. So I like that aspect of it as well. But yeah, exactly what you said about the like having the base and knowing them in each other inside and out, and there's no denying that they're going to have a happy ever after if they know each other that well, I think.
I would totally agree. While some of the other things are very exciting and very spicy and they make for a good story, you know, especially after you've been around the block a few times, you kind of look at them and go, yeah, they're not going to last.
You so do.
Yeah. Or at least they're not going to make it to, you know, their golden anniversary, but it might be fireworks the whole time until then. So your mileage may vary, but I like the warmth of a friends to lovers romance, because if you can be comfortable just sitting on the couch watching a movie or playing a video game together, and it doesn't all have to be what can we do for a hot date this week that outdoes last week, or, you know, where that's all part of the package and you can do that or not, but the pressure isn't there because you just like being with each other anyhow. I really like that dynamic in a story. And you're right, it's even better if everybody else has been saying that they're, oh yeah, you guys are together, right? And they say, no, 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 we're just friends. And everybody else is going, yeah, you're just friends. And then they're kind of the last ones to know. That's always kind of fun too, because then we're sort of in on the secret with everybody else and we watch them figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of the things, is that everybody around them seems to figure out it before they do, and I think that is that's the base of a good story, I think.
Well, and it happens in real life. There were two people I went to grad school with who we all knew they belonged together, except them. It took them another 10 years to figure it out and get married. And we were going, really? Really? We saw this back in grad school. So sometimes it takes a while for it to sink in or for the circumstances to be right.
Yeah, I don't know if I have that egregious an example in my life, but I do know that, you know, a lot of the relationships that I have been in did start out as, you know, friends, maybe not for a long time, like not the best friends forever, which is, you know, one way to go with these friends to lovers stories. But there is the other way of two people who are getting to know each other, and they get to know each other first in a friendly sort of way. And then, you know, they don't dive like from day one into the physical aspect of it. And my best relationships have started out like that. You know, I had something in common with this person. I got to know them through doing the shared interest or whatever, so that by the time we were starting, you know, a more romantic relationship, I knew a lot about them and, you know, their moral values and whether they were good, trustworthy people. So I appreciate Friends to Lovers because it is more reflective of the way I've started my better relationships in my life. So like you said, I have a lot more faith in them actually living happily together.
Elouise?
Yeah, I don't think there's a thing I don't like about the friends to lovers aspect of stories. It's, as we said, as all of us have said, it's just like the base and the history of them, be it like from when, if they were friends from when they were children to if they've been friends for say a year or 2 years. It's getting to know them as friends before diving into anything. I think that helps.
Now, often people in one of those evolving relationships, they don't have their epiphany at the same time. Sometimes there's one person who's figured this out ahead of time and they've been pining for a while, and maybe they're scared to make a move because they don't want to lose the other person's friendship, but they've already figured out that they'd be just fine with this moving ahead.
Yeah, I think that pining is another thing people really like about the friends to lovers trope. They like to see that one way, you know, that one way pining, and then it gets satisfied, you know, so that's really satisfying. Maybe because a lot of us in our own lives have at some point had a secret crush on somebody, and we like to imagine, you know, suddenly finding out like, oh yeah, okay, that's reciprocal, and how wonderful that would be. So yeah, you know, you talk about that obliviousness is what I call it, right? That one person or both people are oblivious, and so it can go either way. Like both of the main characters are oblivious to what's going on, but all of their friends know, and the reader knows, and everybody knows except the two of them. And then you have the even more specific, just one person is oblivious and the other one knows, and everybody, the whole world knows. We just have, you know, this one. And I wrote a story called The List, in which the narrator is, I call him Captain Oblivious at one point, because he is just determinedly not seeing what's right in front of his nose. And I think that's amusing. You know, it's just, it's funny and it's fun.
Well, we often hear of, you know, people being friend zoned. You know, they want something more, but the other person just has them in that friend zone. And I always think, you know, don't count yourself out yet. It might not be over. You're still close, And I've got to say, that's kind of from real life. I had a crush on my husband the whole way through college, and then nothing ever happened. But we were friends, and we caught up with each other after grad school, and everything happened really fast. Within 6 months, we were engaged. 6 months later, we were married, and it's been 33 years. So I always joke that, I let him chase me until I caught him, because I knew he was a good guy. It just took him a while to catch up with the program. So I kind of look at that and go, well, that's one of the reasons this is one of my favorite tropes, because it actually happens in real life. I think more people are likely to run into a friend that they could see becoming more than that, than as much fun as some of the other tropes like billionaires and everything are. I don't think most of us have met most of those people, or might. And I know that's part of the fantasy allure, and I'm not putting it down, but in terms of what you're probably likely to find yourself, more likely to be a friend than a billionaire, maybe. Your mileage may vary.
If only I had some friends who are billionaires. I do not.
See, maybe that's,
send them my way.
if all of your friends are billionaires, then yes, the friends to lovers crosses over with the billionaire trope, and it's all good. I am remiss on that. Yes.
I need to pick better friends. Yes.
Now, how do you keep the friends to lovers trope fresh? So that, I mean, yes, we all know when we start a book that says friends to lovers, they're going to start as friends, they're going to end up as lovers, and it's romance, so they have to have a happily for now or a happily ever after. But in the meantime, how do you throw some curveballs in there so every book doesn't read like the last 10 books you read?
Wow. It is difficult, and I suppose it's the same. It's not just, I suppose, the friends to lovers trope. It's the same with any kind of trope as well. There's always likely to be some little detail that you could change that makes it slightly different from something else. For mine, I like to work out what the characters want at the end of the day, and just see where the idea takes me. Sometimes you can see it going in exactly the same route as another one, and then you think, okay, what's going to happen here? And then another idea kind of comes in and sideswipes you in a completely different direction. And I don't think it's really difficult for me to try and explain to somebody how the ideas come about. I don't know if it's the same for you two, but they kind of just appear.
I suppose for me, every book comes down to what is keeping these characters apart, right? So it doesn't even really matter if it's friends to lovers, enemies to lovers, whatever it is. Something has to be keeping them apart. And so in friends to lovers, obliviousness, like we talked about, is a big one. But I feel like there's got to be like a reason for the obliviousness, usually something believable for why these characters aren't figuring it out. But a lot of times what I see is one of the characters hasn't previously considered same-sex relationships. So that's, takes that friends to lovers and adds in that, bi for you trope that readers also really enjoy, where the character had not considered this person as an option because they hadn't considered their entire gender as an option before. Readers really enjoy that one. I recently released a book that's called 20 Days to LA. So it's hashtag 20 Days to LA, like all one word. And in that one, the characters just want extremely different things from their futures. So that's what's keeping them apart. Like they're physically attracted to each other, but it's just supposed to be kind of a temporary thing because this one character very particularly is like, I don't want a husband like you. I want a husband and he's not going to be like you. You're a fine person to be friends with, you're a fine person to have sex with, but you're not going to be a fine person to marry. So that was what I did to keep them apart in that one.
I think it's interesting, one of the things you said about them not considering the person as an option because they haven't realized that they're bi. And that whole bi awakening piece, which is really at the heart of Gay for You, is something that I think is very interesting. And if you look at buddy flick comedies and all those buddy flick movies where time after time these guys put their life on the line for each other and step in front of bullets for each other and you know, go to the end of the world for each other, and you're going, yeah, and you're not in love? To me, a lot of the, especially, you know, on the action adventure side, I see the male-male romance piece as all of those buddy flick movies with benefits, you know, when if they could finally say, you know, you're not just my best friend, you're also the love of my life, and then fall in bed with each other. I think that would have made a lot of those movies over the years much better.
Yeah, you take the bromance just straight to romance, right? Yeah. I think that could be just a great way to take the friends to lovers, more than friends, even in that case. It's like, you know, partners in crime to romance, very intense.
Yeah. And you actually see some of that in some of the friends to lovers stories where the two people have served in the military together, or they've been special ops together. They've been in some sort of life-threatening situation where it really didn't give them room to think about romance at the time because they were all just trying not to die. And then later they realized that those feelings are very intense in every way, and it kind of grows out of that. And I think that awkwardness that comes at that point is kind of interesting in the friends to lovers trope, because there's the stakes of getting turned down are so much higher if this is somebody who means something to you, and not just, you know, somebody you swiped right on, or somebody that you met in a bar and okay, they turn you down, you're bummed for a day. But wow, what if you take the risk and this person who's kind of your world says, I'm just not into you that way? Now that's a really big risk.
That's excellent, high stakes. And that was where I went with my Captain Oblivious in the end, was that it wasn't that he was oblivious to his attraction or to how perfect, you know, his best friend and roommate was. It was that he really just did, in his experience, men were temporary and disappointing, and they left him. And he couldn't stand for, you know, for this most important person in his life to also go away and disappoint him like that. So yeah, that's a really like high risk component of friends to lovers, is you make that jump and you're taking that chance.
Well, especially if people have not, like you said, had good luck with relationships in the past and their only experience is transitory. Here's this friend that's been with them for years. They don't want to mess that up.
Yeah, I have a story called Treehouse Whispers, and they have been friends for like 30 odd years. One of them suffers from agoraphobia, and he very rarely gets out of the house. He's always, well, not always, but majority of his time is spent in the house. And his best friend lives in the house next door. But the guy Benji, he's always been in love with his best friend, but he doesn't want to take that step. He is scared that he's not only going to lose the chance at having a relationship with him, he's also going to lose the friendship, and he doesn't want to risk it. And it's only the step from his best friend actually kind of meeting them in the middle that it works. So yeah, there's a lot. High risk is a huge factor in them maybe taking their time before actually diving into it.
And one of my books, Kings of the Mountain, and of course with me, everything has urban fantasy, so there are always monsters and magic and witches and monster hunters and that kind of thing. But it's got two guys who have grown up together. They've always been best friends. And that attraction between them starts to change when they're in their teens, but the one is 2 years older than the other, and he's really afraid that the younger one has a crush on him, has a hero worship, but it'll wear off. And he knows he's all in, and he's just really afraid of being left. And so that's one of the big complications there, is that he leaves and goes into the military for several years, giving the other guy time to grow up, which the other guy really doesn't take well, and that doesn't go over. And so big rift and all of that. But yeah, it's that fear of being hurt, that fear of, wow, that fear of being disappointed and losing the person who really is the most important to you, whether or not you're having sex with them. I think that I love that complication with friends to lovers.
And that's a big component of that by awakening subplot, right? That, okay, one of the characters maybe knows that he's, attracted to men, and he doesn't want to be just like this experiment or something that the other character comes to regret later. So it's this double big step of, this is my friend, and he's never done this before, and is this really what he's going to want to do, and make it into a relationship? Or is this just like a little bit of curiosity that's going to pass when he sobers up tomorrow? Do I want to be his experiment?
There's actually a term for that, French mistake, which is when somebody has a gay experience as a curiosity thing just to see if they'd like it, and then, maybe it's not their thing when they wake up.
Thumbs down, right?
Yeah, and that's a very legitimate concern for the person who is already comfortable with their sexuality, is that they don't want to push the other person into something that maybe they're not ready for, or that they actually don't want. Is this somebody who cares about me enough that they would do something for me, but it isn't really what they choose? Well, you don't want that. Right. Will they regret it? Will this, am I changing their life? Yeah, that's a big responsibility if you're not really sure the other person is on board and knows what they want. And that's where I think also some of the age of the characters comes into play, because in Kings of the Mountain, when they have their first run-in with each other, they're 17 and 19. And the 19-year-old says, you're going to change your mind, you're going to leave. And when they come back together again, 4 years have passed, they've had a chance to think about this and have other things not work out. And now they're sure. And I think it's even more so when the characters are in their 30s or older, and they've had a little more life under their belt. Thoughts from you, Elouise?
Yeah, I agree a lot with what you said. There is so much that could go wrong, and there's so much that characters can be scared about and not want to risk, and I think that is the major part of it as well. There's like I said, there's so much backstory to them, especially if they've been childhood friends. A lot of them won't want, well, I don't know from experience, but a lot of them might not want to risk losing a really good friendship to something that may or may not work out.
One of the twists on the friends to lovers that I saw someone else do that I thought was done really well was in Lucy Lennox's Borrowing Blue, where the guy gets stood up for his wedding, and he runs into his ex-fiancée, and she's on somebody else's arm already, and he doesn't want to be there by himself. So he talks his straight friend into being his fake boyfriend for the weekend. So it brings that whole fake boyfriend thing in. And by the end of the weekend, the fake boyfriend is questioning all kinds of things.
Yeah, that fake relationship, friends to lovers, can be a great overlap. I recently read a book by Allison Temple called Boyfriend with Benefits, that was that trope. They're friends and they're roommates, and then one of them needs a fake boyfriend, and they go to Las Vegas for the weekend, and right by the end of the weekend, real friends and fake boyfriends has turned into real everything. And that's a delightful crossover, I think. It pushes them, right? They're like, okay, we might never have figured out that we were going to be boyfriends, except we have to touch each other and do things that are like boyfriends. And oh, actually, this is working out very well.
I don't mind this. This is keep going. This is fun. Yeah.
Right.
They're one of the Valentine's Inc. series had a whole set of books that were on cruise ships, and I happened to be reading that when I was on a cruise ship, which was really nice. I could never hear the captain's comments over the intercom again after one of the books in that series, without thinking about what happened in the book. But one of them was somebody who had intended to go on the cruise with their boyfriend, who then, broke up with them, and now he's got a paid ticket. He wants to take someone. So he wrangles somebody he hardly even knows into going with him. Hey, come on, it's free. It's all paid for, even the drinks. Just we got to pretend to be boyfriends. And then, of course, by the end of the cruise, they're together. But I love that sort of thing. Elouise, what kind of friends to lover stories have you written?
I've only actually written 2 at the minute. So the Treehouse Whispers that I mentioned about earlier. And then I've got a short story called Ignite, which is actually the first in what I call a mini series for me. It's hopefully going to be out next year. And basically it all revolves around this matchmaking company called Illuminate. So people, well, the actual matchmaking company is quite exclusive and very expensive. And people will sign up for it, and they don't get to know anything about their date whatsoever until they arrive on the platform to get on this specific train that takes them from London to Edinburgh. So basically they get a blind date, and they get shoved on a train for 5 hours with this person, not knowing whether they're going to like them or not. And
A train. You are shoved together.
Yeah, you are. So although it's an exclusive train, which obviously doesn't hold as many people as like a normal commuter train, you're still basically shoved on this train and kind of told to get on with it. But this first story is about Leo and Noah, and they have been friends since they were children, and they haven't actually told each other that they had signed up to this company. So Leo's there waiting on the train, messaging Noah and saying, oh, my date's not here yet, and all this, that and the other. And then Noah turns up, and they kind of go, oh my God, we've been matched together. And initially they're not sure how to take it. They're trying to cross from being friends and trying to see whether they can act like emotionally, whether they think they can cross the barrier into more. And that is basically the story. It takes them on the journey on the train to begin with, their time in Edinburgh, and then the train journey home, and then you get a glimpse into how they react around each other when they get home as well.
Funny story. We took the train from London to Edinburgh when I was in the UK a couple of years ago, and I was with my husband and some of our kids, and Great Western double booked the train. So there were twice as many people. Fortunately, we had seats reserved, but they just said, well, you guys all have tickets, get on, find a spot. So there were people sitting on their suitcases in the aisles. There were people sitting in those little lots between the cars. And I was so intrigued because this being England, everybody was so incredibly polite, and people just brought out their packed lunches with their sandwiches and their wine and just sat on their suitcases and had a nice little picnic, and everybody was so civil. And my husband and I are looking at each other going, okay, there would be 4 fist fights by now in New York. So all we were missing were people holding chickens and goats. It was just wall to wall people. So yes, that's my one experience of taking the train from London to Edinburgh. I needed a chicken. Yeah, Tanya, what about other friends to lovers stories you've written?
So, right. So I have that one short story called The List that is their best friends and roommates. Um, and that one focuses mostly around obliviousness. As we said, it's kind of a comedy, so it's hopefully funny how oblivious this guy is. And then I have my recent one, 20 Days to LA, where they are ex-stepbrothers really on a road trip together. And it's opposites attract. As I said, they want very different things from it. And it is also by awakening, you know, one of them is supposedly straight. So there's a lot going on in that one. But I guess my other friends to lovers that I have as another by awakening, it's actually an MMF, which is a pairing that I really like a lot, that you don't see too much of outside of the erotica genre. You don't see too much of it in romance. And so it's also poly. So it's polyamorous and it's open poly. So my narrator meets a couple and becomes sexually involved with the woman and really, really likes her. But in the meantime, he's also spending time with the husband, and they just become best friends. Like he, you know, this main character, Nate, he's like, I've never had a friend this good. And he's sort of struggling with, you know, but I also want to like do things with him. And, you know, he's not sure. He has to take that step. And so there's a lot of risk there in that he's got this good thing going for him with the wife already. And, you know, he's got this friendship going with the husband. And what he really wants is an MMF situation. Is like, can he take that last step to have everything he's ever dreamed of? So I really like that one because I feel like the friendship is so clear before the attraction comes. You know, they haven't known each other forever, but they just become instant best friends. That spark of physical attraction really seals the deal there.
Yeah, that does make for an interesting combination. And I think we are seeing more stories about thruples and poly in all sides of romance. And I've read several thruple stories that are MMM where, again, you've got that person not wanting to lose what they have, but thinking that this other person would be a good addition for both of them. And can they make it work? And that is an added piece of uncertainty, especially if the existing relationship has been going well and going for a long time. You don't want to mess that up with something that might just be kind of a flash in the pan. So yeah, that's scary.
Right. And Nate feels like he's on the outside because, right, the other two are married. And it's like, how do I insert myself into this marriage? The name of the book is You, Me, and Her. So, and it's all told from Nate's point of view. So it's how does he become this third part of their triangle? Yeah, that's all. I talked about it.
Because, and I'm not going to identify, but there is a very famous scandal going on at the moment involving a pool boy with a married couple. And in his case, it didn't really work out. But
you do what you want to do, right? I got no judgment there, right? the judgment is when you tell other people not to do what you're gonna do.
Right, that's right. Well, and you know, in my story, Romp, the thing that makes the friends to lovers thing a little different is that, first of all, my main character is an otter shifter. So he can be a human, he can be an otter. He's a shifter. And he starts having these dreams about somebody he's never met, but he meets this guy in a pub, and at first they just kind of hang out and talk and play pool and play darts, and they just really have a good time together. And he feels this connection to this person in his dream. And gradually those dreams become more erotic. They go home together. They have the best sex he's ever had, but it's still this person he's never met. And he has fallen in love with someone that he doesn't think is real, but he can't let go of how real the connection feels. And that's where the meat of the story is, figuring out where, you know, whether or not his person is real or not. And so that's kind of an extra twist on top of the shifter piece.
I actually just read that last night, and what I really liked about it is that the best friends are furry friends. Like they become furry friends first,
And they don't.
with his otter and his eventual mates, beaver, and while meanwhile there's this kind of more than friends thing going on in his dreams. That was a lot of plot, a lot of interesting elements in a shorter piece of work. So I appreciated everything you got in there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, he was really, really confused there for a while.
But it was so adorable though. Like, you know, I read a lot of shifter stuff. I really enjoy it, but I don't think I've ever seen that before, where they become furry friends first before getting together as people.
Yeah, I love that aspect. I read that today actually. Yeah, and I love that aspect. The animals as best friends. That's yeah, it's lovely.
Well, and the extra thing they had, you know, kind of as tension between them that you don't really run into with people, is otters are technically meat eaters and predators, and have been known in some cases to eat beavers. Beavers are herbivores. And so it's kind of a big thing that he's a vegetarian, and, you know, that actually caused him problems with his family, his romp, which is why he got thrown out. But it is kind of comforting to know that maybe your hot new boyfriend isn't going to have you for lunch someday.
Yeah, I would never, before I read this, I would never have imagined that a beaver would find an otter threatening. They're the same animal in my brain, basically, in terms of like size and whatever. But yeah, I learned some things reading that. I learned that, and I learned that the word romp is like the collective noun for otters, which another thing I had never had reason to know.
I thought otters were, you know, vegetarians, except maybe fish. And apparently, according to my research, they're not.
They'll eat what they can get, right? Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. They're kind of omnivores. So, what? Now we've talked about what we've written as friends to lovers. What else do you write? What other kind of pairings do you write? Tanya?
You want, okay. So I've done a little bit of enemies to lovers, but not too much, because I really do like to see that cooperative relationship growing between people. And one of my my principles, one of my promises to my readers, is that I will write about good people who are worthy of love. So then I get challenged as to, if I have these two good people who are worthy of love, what made them enemies to each other? So I would say that most of my relationships fall like more in the middle, somewhere they meet, they have maybe some insta lust for each other, and they have reason why they have to work on something together collaboratively, and through that and the combination of lust, the relationship grows so that they become friends as they're becoming lovers. Basically, I do still like to really build that friendship, but probably most of my books start with the people meeting, not necessarily having had a long relationship beforehand.
And Elouise, if you haven't written it yet, what would you like to write, or what other tropes do you enjoy reading?
I read anything, in all honesty. I don't, apart from male being my kind of go-to stories, I honestly will try anything at all. I write a lot of trying to think of the word. Well, I call them sexual awakening ones, which is kind of like the bi for you. That's just how I call them. And I've done a few of the insta love type of stories as well. But it's I honestly couldn't tell you what my favorite kind of story to read or write is, because it's just so varied, and it all depends on kind of the things that are around me at the time, and maybe something's caught my eye and thought, oh yeah, and it's kind of flicked a switch, and then I've gone off in a different direction, writing something completely different to what I've normally written or read. So yeah, it's really difficult because there is so many different stories out there, and even within the same trope, there's such a variety of story. It's difficult to write exactly the same story all the time, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And with my other series, I wouldn't say that there's an enemies to lovers aspect, but there's a deep skepticism and mistrust of the other person because of the way in which they met. And so they have to work through, can I trust this person? I've been burned before. We met under really hinky circumstances. Do I really want to do this? And that, or if one of the people claims to have abilities as a psychic or a medium and the other person doesn't really believe in that kind of stuff, there's a skepticism there until proven that keeps them apart and causes all those problems. So that's been kind of fun to work with, because again, I play with the urban fantasy piece of things as much as the romance. And on the Gail side, there are 2 series that are definitely buddy flick series, and I have promised my readers there's never going to be a romantic element in those 2 series, so that the readers can ship them or not as they want, but they can make up their own mind, choose your own adventure on, because the romance in those stories, since it's on the urban fantasy side of things, that's not what people come to the series for. They come for the action and adventure. And so I told them, ship or not ship as you want. I'm not going to clarify it for you. So that's been kind of fun. Now, one of the things that brought us together is that we are also part of a multi-author giveaway. Its time is short. It ends September 14th, but it is a Friends to Lovers mail giveaway. And there are 16 fantastic stories by 16 fantastic authors. And I think some of the stories we've mentioned here are our stories in the giveaway. I know mine, Romp, definitely is. How about you guys?
Yeah.
Ignite is the one that I've put in the giveaway. So that's kind of a link into hopefully the series next year as well.
And Tanya, your list is there. I see it.
Yes, the list is my offering in it. So it's a rom-com. Very funny, I think. I think it's funny.
Those are fun. Those are a lot of fun. And we've got some other stories here by Allie Knowlton, Ashlyn Mills, H.L. Day, Megs Pritchard, Rebecca James, Mia Monroe, C.W. Clay, Skylar Cates, Charlie Novak, Brooke Edwards, Talia Carmichael, F.R. D'Angelo, and Toby Wise. So we've got a lot of great stories out there for people to find, but you got to find them fast because this goes away on September 14th. And we want you to get all of the goodies while you can. So before we wrap things up here, aside from giveaways and things like that, where can people find you on social media if they want to look you up and find more of your books? Tanya?
I am on Facebook as Tanya Chris, and probably the best way to keep in touch with me is to subscribe to my newsletter. So if you just go to my website, tanyachris.com, I have all the information there about my books, and I have a whole bunch of free stories that I give away. You don't even have to subscribe to my newsletter or anything, but if you subscribe to my newsletter, you can actually download the stories to your Kindle, but you can just read them free online. So there's a couple dozen there, and probably when this giveaway ends, eventually the list will end up over there, but other good Friends to Lovers short stories available on my website, so check it out.
Awesome. Elouise?
Yeah, website for me really. So if you look at elouiseeast.com, You get a list of all the books that I've written so far, and you can also see what I'm working towards as well. There's also a list of all the giveaways that I'm a part of, and you can sign up to my newsletter as well from the website, and you actually will get the book 2 of the same series that comes from this giveaway as well, when you sign up to the newsletter. But yeah, I'm all over social media as well, so Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and you name it, I'm there.
Well, and of course, my websites are morganbrice.com, and that's BRICE, and gailzmartin.com. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram under those names, and so I'm pretty easy to find. As long as you remember the Z in the Gail Z Martin and spell Brice correctly, you're going to find me. Romp is actually a set in my Fox Hollow world, and my latest novel, Huntsman, is a full-length novel in that world. Romp is a side story, but it takes place in the same world, and you run into some of the characters that you meet in Huntsman, so that's kind of fun. Well, folks, thank you very, very much for being with me today. This has been a lot of fun talking about favorite tropes and friends, lovers, and all that good stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here with me, especially on a weekend. And to those watching us, thank you so much for hanging out with us. There'll be a lot more on romance and more here in Continual. Thanks so much.